Good. All right, what's your name?
Candace Cooley.
Candace Cooley, and you are?
Dylan's mother.
Okay, and you are?
Justin Rounds, Dylan's dad.
Dylan's dad. Okay. When did Dylan go missing?
Saturday, May 28th.
When's the last time you saw Dylan?
I seen him that Monday before.
So 5-6 days before he went missing.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we physically located at this moment?
We are in the shed the grain truck was parked in.
So we are currently at Dylan's last known location?
Yes.
Okay.
Dylan Round's family has said that he did not just walk away from his farm.
It's truly eerie. You know he's here somewhere.
Dylan's family hopes new technology can help them find clues.
With the help of the Diesel brothers, his family is back out here searching for their son.
You know, people want answers. People want to know what happened. But ultimately, it's like, hey, if this was your son or your little brother, what would you do? All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back out in the desert, back on the Dylan Rounds case. Today we've got some super special stuff we're working with. We've got a specialty drone from an organization called EcuSearch. It's basically a near infrared radar sonar type device that has the ability to penetrate into the ground and find clandestine graves, which is basically unmarked burial sites. So we're gonna meet with Dylan's family right now and figure out where to go from here. How did the drone come about?
The FBI was trying to get approval from headquarters.
Yeah.
But there's something about the technology that's on that they cannot.
It was banned for.
Yeah.
So the federal government put a like they shut that whole program down for a while. That verdict was overruled by it was a big district court or Supreme Court, and they said no, you can't stop this thing from flying. So they put it back in the air, and I think that was 2014 from what I figured out. So since then they've been able to use it, but it must be a pretty potent device if the federal government said you can't use this to find missing people.
Yeah, well, and I guess the feds are still saying as a federal agent you can't fly it.
We've done quite a bit of research and homework on how they function. Been working with the guys over there. Are we on the phone? Okay, perfect. Hey, Gene, it's Dave. How are you?
Good, Dave. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. Hey, so I familiarized myself pretty well with the drone and kind of the technology. So we got a good idea of how to operate it. But as far as delivering the information and kind of explaining the technology a little bit more in depth, I was curious what the process is from once we actually collect the images and the data, then do you guys process it through some sort of system or filter to be able to locate the disturbances?
The RGBs we will run through a software called Locate, surprisingly enough.
Huh, that's easy.
And it scans through, and we don't really care how many images you take because the software scans through them at like 4 images per second.
Nice.
And it will we'll look for things like different colors and that sort of thing because that's typically trace evidence.
If we know what we're looking for, then there's the potential of seeing something. But that's basically the near infrared is what's basically redirecting the light to be able to show clandestine graves, so organic matter, that type of stuff.
We're looking for disturbed earth.
The ground out here has such a high salt content that there's not a ton of vegetation, which is actually good because that's going to help us steer clear of a lot of the false readings and stuff like that. So we'll get it up, and then once we start kind of analyzing images, if we come across anything that seems interesting, then we'll get up to you obviously right away. But otherwise, we'll just have a whole data dump for you here at the end of the day.
Outstanding. Best of luck to you guys.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So we will set up the grid area.
Okay.
The app has a map on it, and then we just draw kind of a square, and the square has like just a zigzag pattern. You just put the drone
pull
up
it up right now.
Do you want to start right at the shed?
I think we start at the shed and work towards the pond.
Okay.
That's Jeff really wanted that
to
make sure it got covered in the first sweep. We'll probably want to go up.
We're gonna want to go over to the grain shed.
Yeah.
And then we'll basically from there work west.
Yep.
So basically right now I'm setting the grid for the first flight, and this grid is telling me that it's about 3,000 by 2,500 feet. So it's a little bit of a rectangle, and It says the flight time should be about 38 minutes. So the drone is back from its first mission. The way this drone works is, it's just a standard, you know, a DJI drone, but the magic is in the lenses and the sensors. It just flew over 55 acres and now has 330 images, which it is going to be downloading to the device here, which we'll be able to look at. Now, the first images that we're going to be looking at are the near infrared lens. We also have another lens, which is, this is an RGB lens right here. Basically, this can tell different types of grounds and disturbances and stuff like that, but both of these lenses are intended to take a look at what's happening on the surface and if there's discoloration and stuff. So basically anything that's light white or bright white is irrelevant to what we're looking for. We're looking for dark patches. Image of any dark areas are cadavers and corpses. So same type of image that we're looking at here. So Dylan went missing May 26th, 27th, 28th. What were the first 2 weeks like?
Scrambling. It's crazy. We were just out here. We just didn't know. I mean, we were just desperately trying to find Dylan, and we didn't have any guidance, so we didn't know what to do. So we were just doing everything we could think of.
And I know there's some frustration in those early days because, I don't want to say the involvement, but the ability of different agencies to jump in and do what we always expect them to do, right? Like if this happened in downtown Idaho Falls, what would you expect to happen?
Agencies to show up, search and rescue, dog, I mean, all kinds of different resources.
It's like what you see on the news and in the movies, right?
Yeah.
Did that happen out here?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Why do you think that happened?
We can't wrap our heads around it because the first day when we found Dylan's boots, it should have changed the whole thoughts from law enforcement. Like it should have turned into that when you find the missing kid's boots.
Did you look for Dylan in the grain truck?
I did. That's one of the first places I went. I was looking around the truck. I wasn't even sure if I was supposed to touch the truck.
Right.
I jumped in and walked around in the grain, and you know, I'd second guessed that I even did it.
Right.
Like the day after, and we did it again, and I had a buddy, he did it too, and we checked to see if the grain was wet from being out in the rain. I mean, we didn't know, you know, I second guessed a lot of what I did. I almost forgot what I'd done and redid things.
That fog of war type of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Did you search the pond? Any bodies of water nearby?
Yes.
Dylan has a little fish pond where he was staying, and we drained it the very next morning.
Could Dylan have left in the way that he left and made it very far?
No.
No. He wouldn't.
His bank account was never touched.
He wouldn't have any cash, hardly at all.
Pickup was here.
So even if he was in the worst headspace possible, physically it would have been damn near impossible.
Yeah.
Did Dylan have any enemies?
No.
Not that I know of. Jim was jealous of Dylan quite a bit.
Why do you think?
Well, they brought the grain truck to my shop last winter, and I have cameras, and I was watching Jim and Don and kid that worked for me, and Dylan had left, and I was just watching on my phone the video and listening in, and Jim was just jealous about Dylan and how he treated vehicle or this or that, and I told Dylan that Jim wasn't his friend, and Dylan just kind of laughed. Oh, that's just Jim. He's just that way.
Just crusty old man.
Yeah.
How many people do you think occupy or live within this 50-mile area radius?
The guy up on the hill. And
3 maybe now
I mean, in this immediate.
In this valley right here.
Yeah, just in this immediate valley. Yeah, there's 3 left
that live here.
that live here now.
And then if you start moving out closer to Montello's a town of a population of what, maybe 200-300 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some outliers, whether they're property owners, squatters, different types of setups. Was this a dangerous place for Dylan to be alone?
I don't think so.
How long did Dylan live out here?
That's a misunderstanding. Is Dylan didn't technically live out here. Dylan would come out here when he needed to farm, and then he would go to either Justin's house or my house, and in between, he didn't This wasn't his home. That's why he just had a camper. He was just here when he needed to farm. It wasn't full-time
He
by
kind
any
of
means.
lived in my grandpa's house
Yeah.
there. You probably know where the Klein building
Yeah,
is.
up in
directly
Rexburg.
south, directly south of Klein.
Okay.
There's an
Yeah.
old house there.
Yeah,
That's
so
where he would go.
Yeah.
So that's actually news to me. I didn't know the
Yeah,
dynamic.
he didn't live out here like that.
As your case and Dylan's case has started to catch fire and get attention from people all over the country, people have come up with their own theories and their own ideas of what could have happened. And I think one that we could clear up right now is Dylan didn't live here full time, and you guys didn't say, Dylan, you're a problem child. You need to go out to the desert. This was
Yeah.
Dylan's choice.
Yes.
I didn't want him to come out here.
Yeah.
I wanted him to grow up a little bit more and kind of work with me, a little bit, or work for somebody else and learn a little bit more is how I wanted. I didn't really want him out here
Yeah.
till the end, and then I just started kind of going along with it for a while. I fought this place. I'd never been out here until Saturday.
Oh, you hadn't been out here
Me,
ever
I haven't. She had.
until
but I-
until Dylan went missing.
Yep, I had.
How old was Dylan?
When he went
The day that he went
missing,
missing? 19. So 19-year-old kid, back and forth between Rexburg, Idaho Falls area, and here. Did Dylan have a lot of friends in high school or back up in Idaho? How social was he, scale of 1 to 10?
In FFA and that, he's probably at 7.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had his close
He had
friends.
his close ones.
But he wasn't a huge socialite. It wasn't the big.
It wasn't a big priority.
He didn't
Big
do the
priority.
football games or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he went to school in Hazelton when he was younger, and then he came and lived with me when he was in 8th grade.
8th grade, I think, yeah.
Eighth-
How old was Dylan when you guys split up?
4 or 5,
5.
right in there.
Yeah.
Was that hard on him?
I don't think so. He spent a lot of time in both places.
Yeah.
I think a little. I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
You
as
know-
much as can be expected.
When did this property get acquired?
The first year Dylan came out here was 2019, the spring of 2019.
Was there a family member or anybody that said, hey, you should go check out this area, or I've got an opportunity down here? Or
It
was
was
Dylan
a-
saying, I want to have my own thing, where do I do it?
It was a guy he had business dealings with.
He'd done some farming for the guy, and the guy had ties out here.
So people who are familiar with the terrain and that have been watching the videos, they understand this is a pretty hard place to do anything. So they wonder why here, and what would you guys say to that?
Cheap.
Okay.
Dylan wanted his own farm. He didn't want anybody else's. He didn't want to work for anybody. He
Yeah.
wanted his, and it's the only place he could afford to get started.
Did Dylan know anybody out here, such as the people of interest, before he started farming out here? Or did they approach him?
I don't know
I don't
how
really know
that
how, I think.
came together. I think
Just in passing, and,
Yeah.
well, they knew from Ed.
Ed,
Is that
Ed.
Dylan's grandpa?
no.
No, Ed's the guy that I was talking about with the sprinkler pipe, and
Gotcha.
Ed was the guy that was out here. He's in South Dakota
Yeah,
now.
he knew Don and Jim.
Something, so they just all, I don't really know how it all works.
It seems like every time you tune into this case, you hear a new name, right? And you hear a new person who was involved. From what I understand, was there a partnership out here?
I was with my dad.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dylan and his grandpa.
Dylan
Yes.
and my grandpa my dad bought the section.
Okay. And grandpa was just interested in helping grandson out and giving him a leg up and getting him going.
Yep.
Just like my grandpa helped me buy my first truck, grandpa helped me buy his first farm. Okay. Did you have any business involvement with the farming operation out here?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
They kind of didn't want me to know for a little while.
Because you were happy
I
about it.
wouldn't be too happy.
Yeah. Dylan had a decent amount of equipment. Where did all that come from?
We call him at home Willin and Dylan.
Yeah.
He was always trading stuff out, buying
yeah.
Work and trade
auctions.
for something.
Did Dylan ever have any serious relationships up until this point?
Yeah, just typical running around with girls and having fun.
Okay. So that helps us understand who Dylan was and why he was out here. And obviously we're sitting in a unique spot right here, which is the grain shed, which now if you look on Google, it literally says Dylan
I
Rams
know,
Grain
I've
Shed.
seen that. I didn't
Yeah.
know you could do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's as people watch and learn about this case, they go to Google, Wikipedia, and they started, putting information in. So you can Google Dylan Rounds Grain Shed, and bam, this pops up.
which this is not Dylan's property. This is somebody else's property.
Correct.
You guys know the owner, you had an agreement with him. And that's one unique thing about the land out here is if you look around, there's random structures and equipment, and it's sprinkled across various people's land, including government land.
Correct.
And so why was Jim Brenner in this building at this property, and what was his involvement with Dylan at that time?
So my understanding as to why Jim ended up on this property was his little shed in Montello burnt down. And Don knew him, and so Don brought him out here and said, you know, you can come stay on this guy's ground. So that's my understanding from Dylan of how Jim landed out at this particular property.
Who is Jim Brenner?
So he's a man who lived on this property and
Squatted
squatted,
property.
and then helped.
Didn't own this farm, didn't own much of anything other than maybe a trailer. And what did Jim do for a living?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Until Dylan came about, I believe he was living off of his disability.
Disability.
And then Dylan came about and started giving him work.
Okay, so Jim worked for Dylan on and off. Okay, so that's Jim Brenner. Jim Brenner. Jim is
Late
mid
50s.
late 50s, okay.
58 or 59.
He's been in and out of jail.
He's in the Weber County Jail on federal gun charges. They arrested Brenner June 20th, actually.
Okay.
And then the FBI took custody of him June 30th.
Yeah, okay. The next person and the next name you hear a lot is Don.
Don Heatley worked and helped Dylan too. I don't know how he got to know him just from out here in crop passing or whatever, but he helped Dylan do some custom hay work out in Arco. And he was out there doing something, and he started an old tractor, and he jump started it, and it took off and ran over him a whole bunch of times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so then he came and stayed in my grandpa's house, not the winter of 2020.
Yeah.
And my dad would drive him to the doctor's appointments and stuff, and Dylan would come and stay with him and help him. And
So the reason why Don was taken in by your dad was because he was injured while helping Dylan?
Yes.
Okay.
and he, you know, I think he helped Dylan a lot.
Yeah.
He was pretty smart
Yeah.
mechanically, and was a big help for Dylan. So, yeah, they worked together a lot, and Dylan stayed with him at my grandpa's house the winter of 2020 while Don was healing up from that. And I guess they had a little bit of an argument, but I don't know what it was really about or over.
Yeah.
I don't think it was anything drastic.
The washing machine.
Dylan and Don had an argument.
Dylan and Don had an argument because I'd given Dylan a washing machine. He was going to set one up out here. And Don was working on the pump, and Don thought Dylan should be helping him on the pump, and Dylan's, no, I'm fixing my washing machine, and so it turned into the, you know, you're
When was
not
that?
going to tell me what to do. It was like 6 weeks before he went missing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the argument that people talk about?
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't like a knockdown, I mean,
I'd never even heard about it. Dylan had never told me anything.
It wasn't a big
about
enough deal for him to
so
call home and say,
No.
Don and I got a problem.
I didn't know anything about it.
Is Don a landowner out here?
no.
Don had similar living arrangements as Jim, kind of just living on a piece of...
Lot nicer.
Lot
I mean,
nicer.
and nicer fifth wheel, and
Yeah.
he had a Harley and a few things. It was set up nice. And
Not
he
a
was
pigsty,
clean.
clean,
Yeah.
clean.
He was clean.
How did Don make a living?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was he also kind of hired by Dylan to help odd jobs?
I think he was retired. He was a little older. I think
Okay.
he'd retired and actually done stuff and
Yeah.
had made some retirement money.
Yeah, so he was more established. So his involvement with Dylan on helping on the farm, was that a paid arrangement or just like a hey, I owe you for taking care of me type deal? Friendship?
No, Dylan paid him.
Okay, it was a
Yeah,
business
Dylan paid him.
relationship.
And he
okay.
wasn't owed money, we can clear up that Don Haley was not owed money by Dylan, we've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
Like Dylan had gave him a check that cleared the account, that cleared everything up when they parted ways, and it was a done deal.
How long before Dylan went missing had they parted ways?
About 6 weeks.
6 weeks was the argument, that was kind of the
Yeah.
Dylan, they just kind of stopped talking after
Yeah,
that.
and I'm sure it would have patched up once Dylan got the crop going, but
Right.
then Dylan left the area. Dylan went and did custom work at other places, so he wasn't even around for it to be patched up.
Yeah,
The opportunity never came about. I truly believe it would have.
okay. Another person of interest, or one of the first names you hear about, is the story was this drugged out guy walking down a road that Dylan passed, didn't give a ride to, and then turned around and picked him up. That person is Chase Venstra?
Correct.
What was that encounter in a nutshell actually like?
So Dylan called me Wednesday, May 25th, and said, "You'll never believe this, Mom." And he proceeds to tell me this guy with no shoes on came running out of the desert. He was bloody. He looked like he'd been out there for days, and he wanted a ride and to charge his phone so he could call.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a whole lot of detail. And Dylan said, "I didn't give him a ride though."
Yeah.
And we've now learned through eyewitnesses and Chase himself that Dylan did give him a ride, which was where our theory came from when we found the boots. Was, hey, Chase didn't have shoes on when Dylan found him and left him there, and now Dylan's missing without shoes. So we were looking at a revenge type of motive, right? But then we found out that Dylan did give Chase a ride, and then Chase was later spotted going back out to the desert and picked up by his dad.
Okay. Dylan knew Chase before that encounter?
Dylan said amen, and I never heard Dylan say the name Chase,
but they say
ever.
people in town said that he knew who he was.
Say they knew who we were.
But I don't know.
He never said that. Everybody else we've had encounters in
I've heard of Jim,
Mm-hmm.
Don, and Kurt, and that's
Kevin,
about all I've ever
John,
heard of Kevin.
I mean,
If Dylan did know Chase or any of these other people beforehand and didn't tell you about them, why would that have been?
Because it was insignificant.
Do you think it's also because you already didn't want him out here and Mom's gonna worry about Dylan running into people that don't have great stories about him, so he doesn't necessarily want to share.
Yeah.
If it's not relevant and super significant, would he want to give you the information about these people
no.
for any other reason?
No, and Dylan loved to call and tell you a good story.
Yeah.
Like
He
when
might want to tell you.
Yeah,
his story.
so if they're just like running into Chase in the desert, okay, so he leaves out the part of, I gave him a ride, because he knows I'm gonna say, what the heck, son, why,
Right.
you know. So if there was any type of run-ins, anything excited, he loved to call and tell you a good story, like,
Yeah.
hey, guess what, this just happened.
Yeah.
So anybody else he was running into was, he said, insignificant, because there wasn't anything going on with him.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that Dylan was kind of brave, independent, and wayward in the sense that he could do his own thing, his own way, but at the same time, he had respect for you guys as his parents, that even at 19 years old, he was obedient to you?
To a point,
I mean,
yeah.
You guys have heard a wide range of theories about Dylan's disappearance? Have you heard some crazy stories?
oh,
Yeah,
insane
probably.
stuff.
Are there any significant moments that you would like to clear up?
Well, we have evidence that everything happened right where we are.
Yeah.
We have that evidence, so all these other crazy, insane theories, you know, there's been stuff that we've been told not to release, and there's some of that we'll clear up, but
Yeah.
all the evidence points to right where we are.
Yeah. So the day after Dylan went missing, Monday, you guys came down. First thing you do is search Dylan's personal,
Yes.
trailer, his truck. Was his truck there?
His pickup, yes.
Okay, his pickup was at his camper,
Yes.
at the farm, which is approximately a couple miles directly.
5 miles.
Okay. What did you find in the camper?
Nothing out of place.
A really dirty camper.
Just a 19-year-old kid's camper.
Yeah, yeah.
Some hot dogs on the counter and stuff that had been there for a few days.
Yeah.
He had been there for a few days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, my son and I went in there and I made a comment like, "Oh my gosh, Dylan," and my son got pretty upset with me
Yeah.
that I even say that.
Right.
I didn't know where to be in my mind when we were going there. I didn't know,
Yeah.
This was the very first time we went there.
Right. You don't know if he's just on the other side of town or if he's.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd wondered if maybe there was a tractor not here, and I'd wonder if maybe a tractor broke down, or maybe he'd rolled in a tractor into a wash or
Right.
something, so,
But it
Yeah,
was-
all of his equipment was accounted for.
Okay, everything was accounted for.
Yes.
but it wasn't there.
It wasn't there, it was
Right.
scattered.
Yes.
Yeah.
But within the first 48 hours or so, you guys
Yes.
were able to locate
Yes.
everything. So when you first checked Dylan's camper, his truck keys and his gun, his pistol were not in there, correct?
Correct. Justin had to break the back window out of the pickup to get it.
Okay.
Because we were looking for the gun.
Yeah.
We went there to look for the guns, wondering where they were.
Did Dylan lock his truck a lot?
No,
No.
never.
Okay. And so his keys aren't there, his truck's locked. And then a couple days later, Wednesday, did somebody go back to search the camper?
Our son did,
Okay.
and his friend,
And what did he find?
the key fob,
So Dylan's keys that weren't in his camper on Monday were back in the camper on Wednesday.
in plain sight.
Just, we would have missed it the
On the
first search.
passenger seat,
Okay.
plain sight, right by where I opened up the gun case. And when we got the extra key fob that Justin's mom brought, I set that key fob in the same place, and it was close enough when you push the button on the pickup, it would have opened.
Yeah.
It was not there.
So who put the key in Dylan's camper?
I don't know.
It wasn't Dylan.
No, he wasn't here.
So then the next day on Thursday, went back to the camper to search again and just kind of keep looking. And what did you find?
The pistol.
So you found Dylan's gun on Thursday, the day after you'd found his key fob,
Yep.
which were items that were not in the camper on Monday.
In the same place.
Same
the
spot
key
as the
box.
key.
As the key fob, yes.
Who put the gun there?
It's a good question. There wasn't many people around.
You know, amateur detectives would say, what do the fingerprints say? What did the fingerprints say?
Nothing went to the lab till the following Monday, June 6th.
Was there any prints on the gun that they were able to track outside of Dylan's?
No, I don't think I don't think anything came off the gun.
Okay.
Like nothing.
Who would have had open access to the camper, and then outside of that, who would have been the people that could have potentially entered the camper? I mean, Jim and Don would be characters that maybe.
They had direct access. I mean, Don was out there the whole time and Jim was here, and Don would come back and forth between here and
Yeah.
They were running the pivot pump.
Yeah. When law enforcement was not doing what you thought they might do, did they explain to you why?
it was almost like we were being mocked.
Yeah, it was.
It was terrible, and they were so ignorant to us, and they wouldn't talk to Justin and I together, and they'd separate us and give us different stories. It was horrible.
Yeah.
When I told them they should be ashamed of themselves, it just felt like they just pushed back all the time.
Yeah.
We were told by one detective, he guaranteed that he'd be back tomorrow before noon, and with all this new pings on Dylan's phone and all kinds of stuff, and never did see him
Never came back.
again. No.
Do you know how far of a drive it is from this location to the sheriff's office? That's
About 2.5 hours.
okay.
It's
So
always.
it's a pain in the ass for people to get out
Exactly.
there.
And we've been told that, well, you gotta realize how far they have to drive.
Yeah.
But we're fully aware, but it's your county. You
Right.
signed up to protect and serve it.
Yeah.
I don't care how far you have to drive. This is our son.
Do you feel like the sheriff's office that's responsible for this is a little under-resourced?
No.
Do you feel like they have the resources to do what they
Well,
need to
yeah,
do?
because you've got Salt Lake and Weber and everybody that would have been more than happy to jump in and help. Idaho, so
Bonneville
Bon-
County and
Twin
Idaho
Falls County.
Jumped in
So
and helped and
maybe,
right off the bat.
maybe they are particularly, but all the resources were at their fingertips to bring in. There's been multiple ones that have wanted to help
Yeah.
that have been met with that resistance, and we don't know why.
If this would have happened in a different county, do you think you would have more answers by now?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I believe so.
Do you now feel a need to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody else like you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've already started working on that, and there's a lot of people in the background that have been helping us and get ready for a big push, because nobody should have to fight this hard.
Yeah.
We should not have had to arrange for you guys with the drone and the pushback on that since the first week in July. We've had to make the push. We've had to organize everything. We've had to keep it going.
Yeah.
When Search and Rescue left on Tuesday, I believe had we not have pushed, Box Elder never would have been back out here.
Right. We don't know the inner workings of any of these departments. We don't know who the sheriff is and who he communicates with. And so, like I said, law enforcement as a whole is good. When we were first out here, we were here less than a week after Dylan went
June
missing.
2nd, you guys were out here.
And you were still in kind of that fog of war phase. And as we got information from you, it was like back and forth, and there was snippets of things that you would start to say, and then you would stop and you'd look at each other, and you weren't sure what you could and couldn't say.
Correct.
And that lasted for quite a while, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I was second guessing myself
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
things that I thought I did.
And we just wanted, I mean, like disputing the gun coming back for so long, like this was stuff that, we as a family found, and then law enforcement says, well, you know what, you should probably keep that to yourself. And so we were respecting that, and that's why we were, I was disputing it all the time. But at this point, it's been out there so much. It's just, yes, the gun came back, and no, there was nothing on it.
Right.
But it just helps line the case out to people so that they can understand our frustration. You find your son's boots, his key fob comes back, his gun comes back, and law enforcement pulls out the next day and tells you to hold a public search.
Yeah.
I mean, it was there. The evidence was there. We were slowly gathering it, and so Justin and I were just like we didn't want to screw anything up, but we were all the ones out here finding everything, so we just didn't know what to do. I get how it can make people second guess but we were just trying to respect what they told us to do.
You weren't the only one that had to potentially withhold information to protect the investigation.
I was there when.
Yeah, he was there when the phone was found.
Yeah.
When that guy was talking to you.
Yep. We're finding that there's things that get out, people find out about, and so if it's out there and it's public information, it's no longer private information that's going to necessarily help the investigation.
Correct.
Instead, what it does is then starts to create these different theories.
Yep.
They lose focus of Dylan and where he could potentially be and what could have happened to him, and they start to go down these different paths of here's a relationship that this person had with that person, and maybe they did or didn't have these relationships, or different things happened outside of, maybe there's things that happened in Montello, things that happened in this area that did or didn't happen, but then you have to slide those over towards the case, and how do they help us figure out what happened to Dylan or help us find him?
Yeah.
They don't.
They don't at all.
And there's some really wild stories out there. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of them, and you guys have had to suppress some of them because they were getting a little out of control.
It was getting pretty dangerous out here for me to be here.
Yeah.
And I had to go back after about a month and a half,
about
2
6
months.
weeks.
Does it take a toll on you mentally and emotionally?
It does.
Yeah.
The first time I'd go home on Sundays, and I was not a safe driver coming in and out of here on the roads. It wasn't very good for me to be doing it. But
how would you describe your emotions, kind of the way you feel right now? Is it just numb? Is it empty? Is it hopeful? What is it?
More anger right now.
We're still kind of in the anger.
Yep.
It goes in waves, anger, sad, and then,
Disbelief.
Disbelief is a lot of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't even seem real sometimes.
Right.
You know that this is even happening.
Yeah. So why did you reach out to us?
So this drone was actually offered to Box Elder County back in the 1st of July.
Yeah.
Box Elder County made a very clear statement that they had no interest in flying it, which I did not know until last week. The FBI wanted to assist, but couldn't get permission from headquarters to fly the drone, and so I just finally got sick of waiting, and I talked to Midwest Equisearch, and I said, hey, can we do this on our own? I know some guys that'll help us, and they said, absolutely.
Why would anybody say no, other than just they don't have time for it, or they don't believe in the process?
We got that from the beginning.
Yeah.
On everything we tried to do, we got that from the beginning. Just shrug your shoulders and
I don't understand it at all. I don't.
Yeah.
So with that said, what agency or agencies have been the most helpful?
Our FBI agent's been amazing.
Yeah.
And we get a lot of why doesn't the FBI take over the case? And people got to realize it's not a federal case. The FBI cannot take over. They're assisting. Elko was out here in the early days really helping where we weren't sure. In the first video, again, fog of war, confusion, chaos, I say a few things like law enforcement has been a little lackluster, the involvement hasn't been great, and then instantly Elko's phone rang off the hook for days. Their sheriff's office, days, people saying, why aren't you helping? Why aren't you doing this? And so they called me and said, hey, just so you understand, here's the dynamic. We want to be involved. We want to help, but this is not in Elko. This is not even in Nevada. This is in Utah. And Elko, I think, is the largest county in the country. Yeah.
It's like 600 square miles or something like that. So they, even though it wasn't their jurisdiction, because they're a great department and have, I think, a very solid sheriff, they wanted to get involved. However, they get stonewalled by, whether it's intentional or not, by agencies that have jurisdiction here. What has exceeded your expectations? And you just mentioned that those departments that were great, but I can give you one, and I think it's probably the biggest one, is public support.
Yeah. Yep.
Did this kind of restore your faith in
Yeah.
humanity?
It does. The first little while.
The first little while,
we were
though, it
getting
was
slammed,
it was
especially
rough.
her.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was.
Well, you
I
weren't
was
on the news a lot,
disgusted.
right? You were kind of quiet at the first, right?
Yeah,
You weren't doing a
I-
ton of interviews.
I still
Yeah.
try to be,
Yeah.
but she was getting slammed, and it wasn't
Yeah.
bad with me, and I was disgusted in humanity.
Yeah.
But now that I just kind of roll
I think
and
it's
going
made that
now,
flip, that
it's-
turn has.
It's amazing how many people. I'm amazed. She's done a really good job.
There's been this kind of resurgence on YouTube of psychic mediums, and I have my own opinions about psychic mediums, and I've had good experiences, I've had bad experiences. As a family who's been on the receiving side of all the support, what advice would you give people who are offering support, and what would you tell them to maybe stay away from?
So the repetitive questions.
Yeah.
Did you check the grain shed
Yeah.
or the grain truck, the
Yeah.
boot pile? On the Facebook page for Missing America, on the top section for all the new, and I posted this the other day, for all the new members, there's a top section that's a featured section. Don't come on there and start blasting that. I mean, there's so much stuff that comes on there that Jazz and I don't even let hit. That's just listen to the facts. We're telling Dylan's story. We're here to be his voice, and we're trying to figure out what happened to him. But we're telling this part of the story off of evidence.
Right.
And it's all there. It's all, that is one safe place you can go to gather it. Don't come at us with the same thing over
Right.
and over and over. Follow it and follow it correctly, and it'll help you understand, why we're fighting
Where
so
is
hard.
that?
It's on his Facebook page. If you go to the featured tab,
What's the page called?
find Dylan Rounds.
Okay. And so any relevant or major information to this case
Yes.
can be found there.
And anything that we post on there is true.
Yeah.
People can't just come on and post. We have to approve every single post that goes on there.
Yeah.
They just can't come on with their own information and say Dylan's here.
Well, by now you've heard pretty much every theory under the sun. Unless somebody's really stretching, they're going to have to come up with a new theory, which you hear, but the common themes from the miscommunications along the way are out there. This is a
Yep.
great time to clear that stuff up. And I think my hope is in doing that it kind of helps corral the efforts again,
Yeah.
to the point where there's less conspiracy theories about who did what and who's what. What do you need out of this effort? What are you hoping to achieve and accomplish?
So we feel like we're in a position right now where one or two things are going to happen. We either find Dylan, which is where we're all working on towards today, and gather more evidence that way, or they charge Brenner and start talking to him
Yeah.
and gather and get him to break or get information, because where we're at 4.5 months down the road, we're not all going to go walking out there and be like, oh, well, there was Dylan's flannel, or, this has been so covered. And that's part of bringing in the new technology that you guys have helped us with to,
Yeah.
be able to see the difference if there's disturbances. But I mean, we kind of feel like we're at a wall. One or two things have to happen for us to bring our son home.
Yeah.
And so Justin and I can coordinate the search efforts. Like I said, we're working with more dogs. We've just kind of taken that over. But they've got enough evidence to charge Brenner. They've got to charge him and talk to him.
Yeah.
They've got to. They have not talked to him since July.
Yeah. I learned something new today, which is very interesting to me, is that Jim Brenner, kind of the main person of interest, not officially, but
He's the official suspect.
is the official
He
suspect.
is an
Okay.
official suspect.
He's
yes.
in jail and he's called you.
Yes.
What does he say?
He's called my mom and my dad, and he's tells us he's pointing it towards Chase, and he's told us he was here all day Friday and all day Saturday until about 2:30. He said he went to Don's house, and that's in the time, and nobody was here. And he tells me to look into the old railroad track road driving into Utah that Chase used all the time. And he won't say Chase's name.
Oh, he won't say Chase's
He
name?
said, I can't use his name, this person of interest's name.
Why?
I have no idea.
But it's obvious it's Chase.
It's
Yeah.
Chase.
Well, he slipped up in the one phone call
And
with
he
your
has
mom. I
slipped
listened
up a
to.
few
Yeah,
times,
he
but-
slipped up a few times.
But yeah, he's still talking about it being Chase, and that
Which
it's
would
Chase.
be very convenient for Jim
would
if the
be.
world starts to think that it was
But I
Chase.
still don't know how the grain truck got here, if he was here
Yeah,
all day
yeah.
Friday
So
and all day
Brenner
Saturday.
admitted he was
Yeah.
here all day And
with
we
the phone calls,
yeah.
and the phone call Dylan made to him at the gate in the morning, the phone call he made to my mom in the morning, Dylan's phone going back and forth here all on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then to the loose end pond where they found the phone on.
Was Chase officially cleared?
So
Early on, kind of, and then.
well, I just know that they know that Chase was not.
Anybody's been cleared.
Yeah, I don't think anybody, but they know that Chase was not in this area on Saturday or Sunday. That's been verified by.
He has an alibi of where he was.
Well, and by
And
camera.
in a couple places.
And
It wasn't
yeah,
just
it
where
wasn't just
everybody says,
one.
well, he could make it into
Yeah.
the city that he was in.
Yeah.
But it was early in the morning,
Yeah.
you know, in another city. So there was really, the timeline can't add
It
up.
doesn't add up.
Right. You have gut feelings. I have gut feelings about my kids. I have gut feelings about all sorts of stuff. Did your gut tell you what happened to Dylan?
I think Brenner snapped that morning.
Yeah.
I think there was a confrontation right where we're at, and he snapped.
Yeah.
And he did something to Dylan.
Yeah. Jim does something to Dylan, kills him, hurts him, incapacitates him. What does Brenner do next?
My feelings, and Justin may have different ones, but I don't think whatever he did to Dylan where we're at, I don't think he moved Dylan from this place until Sunday.
Yeah.
Because the phone pings and the area the phone was in, and Jim being at Dawn's for sure for dinner, Dylan's phone was moving throughout this area,
Yeah, and
so, and we know it wasn't Dylan who had his phone, so I don't believe either Dylan is right in this vicinity or he didn't take him any further until Sunday, which leads us, you know, to the tracks in the wash and that kind of stuff. So, you know, having what we have, his phone was here all day.
What do you think?
I'm about the same as her. It had to have happened either here or Dylan's, wherever Dylan's phone went, where they tracked. It had to have happened something. Incapacitated him, whatever.
Accident or premeditated?
Snap moment.
Snap. I don't think it was premeditated.
No.
I wouldn't really call it an accident, though.
No.
I mean,
There was, it's definitely not an accident when you hurt somebody like that. It's a moment of rage where.
Yeah.
Where,
but I don't think it was premeditated. Kevin Bibbins just today told me that he told him he's going to kill Dylan, but I don't know if that means like I'm going to kill that little.
Kevin said that about Jim, saying that about Dylan?
Yeah, just this morning when you guys came up here
When,
and I stayed talking
when did he
to
say
him.
he said that?
I don't know.
Cause,
but I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
You know, you can't really.
well, and the battle between those two, because Kevin's the one Brenner beat up with the chair,
Oh. Where does the reward money come from? Is that
just us as a family.
Okay, from the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah,
How would you guys feel if I matched your 100,000 and we put it out there again?
that'd be amazing.
So if we made an announcement that the reward money is now up to $200,000 for somebody that can bring us evidence that's going to directly lead us to finding out what happened to Dylan.
So I don't know if you've read the latest reward poster, but it is very detailed.
Of
Like
what the
it
criteria is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we changed, and that might be why we didn't get the craziness when we upped it. But that's
Yeah.
that's all Jazz does is this kind of stuff. And she's like, if you're gonna put this high, this is what it needs
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say. Because I truly believe that reward is what led to that phone call from Kurt Wadsworth on that Tuesday.
Right.
Because Justin had just left Montello from putting up that $20,000.
Yeah.
And they figured, well, we think it was Chase, so we're going to concoct this story in case it was Chase, and we turned him on to it.
Would you guys feel comfortable with me doing that? And are you ready for more potential leads, crazy or not?
Yeah, anything.
Because we're kind of
Anything.
exhausted right now,
Yeah,
right?
and
It's-
and not only that, but the help that it gets to we say over and over again, we're not going away and we're not
Right.
giving up.
Yeah.
And people got to realize we are dead serious on that. We're
Right.
not going to fade into the background and be like, we'll never know. We will get to the bottom of it one way or another.
Yeah.
It'll come. We will get our son back.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've officially decided that we're going to up the reward amount to $200,000. Now, remember, that's not just call in and say he's here or there and be some wild goose chase. There's very specific criteria. We're going to put the reward poster up on the screen so you can see. There's also going to be a link to the page below, to the Facebook page that gives you all the details. But I'm going to match the family's $100,000, and so now $200,000 to anybody that can bring us Dylan. You know, you hear people say the word closure all the time, right?
Right.
What does that mean to you? Because you are somebody who hasn't received closure yet.
No. I mean, it's knowing.
Right.
It's being able to know what happened. I mean, there's not closure. I think that's probably the wrong word to use because you never close out losing a child.
Right.
But the knowing the why, the how, he didn't suffer, we got him home. That's what we need.
Yeah. Do you think that closure, or whatever that word is a key element to you being able to move on with your life?
Oh, yeah.
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 Yes.
It's got to be frustrating to know that this happened for no reason.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Very.
Like
Absolutely no reason.
For somebody to vanish into thin air, it's
Yeah.
hard.
There's no chain of events that leads to it.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.